Is hypnosis real? Is it dangerous? Do you lose control? Can you get stuck in hypnosis? There's so many different questions about hypnosis. But what is hypnotherapy, and how does it fit within an integrative approach to treatment? Welcome to the Art of Therapy, Season 3, Episode 18.
So good to further just explore the world of art of therapy with you.
Share that.
Yeah. Just to recap a little bit about our previous episodes. So the last time we really looked at a very exciting development in family therapy called narrative therapy, and really had a look how important language is, and also about the stories we tell ourselves, and how the stories we tell ourselves, that creates how we experience our lives and experience our past, our present, and our future as well. And then, of course, if our stories become limiting, there's a way to assist with that. And by working with a therapist to reauthor stories, to have the potential of a different story, a different future. And there's so much empowerment in that.
Very much. To consider that we really live life with, in part, stories. And when I say in part, well, perhaps even just really through story. And what does that mean? What are the stories we've learned, and the stories we're telling and retelling? It is remarkably empowering to think that one can begin to reauthor or tell a new story, a different story. And what story do I want to be telling? What do I want my life to be about? And that's incredibly creative too.
It's so creative and so empowering.
Yes.
And then we also said, but there's a lot of the times the stories we tell, our beliefs, a lot of the times they develop outside our awareness, and that people are not always aware of it. So what do we do about that then? And that brings us then to the next part of what is a way to explore this and work with this as well. And that brings us, of course, into the world of hypnotherapy.
Yeah, it's so exciting to think of that with each development, it's a different aspect, a new lens. And yes, they're going to be beliefs, experiences, stories that are at a level that are below conscious awareness, that seemingly are difficult to access, ideas, thinking. And how do we then deal with that as therapists? How can we engage there? And wow, hypnosis and hypnotherapy, that is precise.
It's precise. And hypnosis and hypnotherapy, it's actually been a part of our lives for a very, very long time. So maybe if we can just start to have a look at it, where did it come from? Just to look at a bit of the beginnings of hypnosis.
Yes. Well, we touched on this in earlier episodes in the first series. But I think as we just look at it, yes, there's an enormous history to hypnosis, and there's various ways of punctuating. But one way is really with Franz Mesmer in 1766. And he was a German physician and was exploring an idea around what he called animal magnetism, that animate or living beings have a magnetic fluid, and when the direction, polarity of it changes through the utilization of magnets, healing occurs. And this just sounded so obscure. He was, of course, later branded by others as charlatan. There was a lot of skepticism. But interestingly, that understanding of that there's something that can happen with some unusual process that relates to, again, this animal magnetism. And his view at the time was that someone goes into something of a crisis, and there's laughter or tears or certain disturbances, and that was the idea that it would lead to a crisis, a healing crisis associated with therapeutic benefits. And that was the original thinking. And about 18 years later, one of his own students, Marquis de Puységur, a French aristocrat who'd been trained by Mesmer, discovered that someone could go into the state without going through the typical crisis. And it looked more like a slumber or a sleep, and now it was now called a magnetic slumber or sleep, that one could go into this therapeutic state without a crisis, and that could be really meaningful. That was about 18 years later. Then our next major development is the next number of years, which was really some years on, and it was in about 1842 with a Scottish physician, James Braid, and one of his own patients had just entered the now called mesmeric state, but it occurred just spontaneously without any facilitation while the patient was looking at a light. And this led James Braid to rethinking about hypnosis and considered it some kind of sleepiness or some kind of slowing down a physiological process and one of the nervous system, the brain. And so at the time, he called it neurohypnotism, neuro meaning neuron, to do with nervous, as in the nervous system, and then hypnotism, meaning sleep, because he said it was not, it was related to sleep, but not entirely like sleep, and so it was now called neurohypnotism. And he later recognized just how different it was from sleep, but now the term stuck. Hypnotism, the neuro fell away, hypnotism, or today what's known as hypnosis. So that was a key development. And then the next major development came in the 1900s with Milton H. Erickson. He was a remarkable psychiatrist and did incredible family therapy work. And he really started to utilize hypnosis and effectively medical hypnosis, hypnotherapeutic application of it, and just did incredible work. And he looked upon hypnosis as, there's so many different definitions, but one way that he thought about it was that it's a state of intensified attention and receptiveness, and it's an increased responsiveness to an idea or set of ideas. And so what he was thinking of is a process where one increasingly goes inward and accesses other conscious or things that are beyond consciousness, be it subconscious, unconscious. And that was a remarkable development. It's just that he was so skilled, it was really difficult for therapists and practitioners to emulate and model him and understand exactly what he was doing. And this is where we then come across some just remarkable work too with, at much the same time, Dave Elman. And it was Dave Elman who hadn't been psychologically trained, and he had been hypnotized by his father from a very early age. And he just had such a clear, pure experience of hypnosis repeatedly that he just formulated in an altogether new way. And it's part of this understanding today that we can draw on, which is just enabled hypnosis and its utilization in therapy, hypnotherapy, to just be utilized beautifully in treatment, in the therapy room, safely and quickly. And part of that relates to his work.
It's such a rich history, and it's been coming for such a long time.
Yes.
And it's beautiful to see how it progresses and how much more visible it becomes actually. And that it becomes tangible, you can see it, and how Dave Elman really contributed to that as well.
Yes, I think this is so important because there was a great deal of emphasis on Milton H. Erickson and the incredible work he's done. And for our purpose, also helpful just to review some of the very practical clear thinking here that Dave Elman adds. And really he defined hypnosis very, very simply in the following way. He said it's a state of mind in which the critical faculty of the mind is bypassed and selective thinking is established. And that's it.
That's so simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he defined it in this way. And today, internationally, that's a very a largely accepted definition. There are others, but a largely accepted definition of hypnosis. And so there are three parts to that Dave Elman had identified. The first is hypnosis state of mind. So it's not a condition. And a state of mind is much like an emotion. You can bring it on and experience it immediately, and you can take it away immediately. Extremely spontaneous, responsive. It's not a condition, it's a state of mind. And then the second part to it was it's a state of mind, and then, well, it's the critical faculty of the mind is bypassed. Well, the critical faculty is just quite simply that sense of everyday judgment. And tells us what hot is hot and cold, cold. It's just everyday judgment, but it's just suspended momentarily. And then the final part is, once that's suspended, selective thinking is established. Anything you believe wholeheartedly. And when that occurs, you've got something deeply meaningful. You have hypnosis.
It's so simple when it's explained like this, and it makes it so visible.
Yes, it is. It is so clear, so visible, and it means it's readily available for many people to experience in their therapeutic processes, for therapists to learn it, to utilize it as an adjunct in their therapeutic and treatment approaches.
Sure. I think it just makes me think of, just with hypnosis as well, is just maybe understanding the different levels of the mind as well, and starting to look into that.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because it's one thing to say, okay, what is hypnosis? But how does it work, or what's going on? And that's where I think, yes, the analogy of the mind, levels of the mind. And it's just helpful to consider, by way of analogy, that when it comes to the mind, there are three parts. And the first part is what one could call the unconscious mind. That part of the mind that's really regulating all our physiological processes, really from birth. So things like temperature, breathing, our hormonal processes, neurotransmitters. These are just processes that occur at an unconscious level. There's no training or learning that's required. And it's, in a way, the way we just made, the way we wired as human beings. And if we just use a computer analogy, that's much like the ROM, the hard drive that starts up, and there's really clear instructions about how it's going to run and operate. That's much like the unconscious. And the beautiful thing about the unconscious is, yes, it regulates all of these processes and autonomic nervous system processes. But we discover, and we touched on Pavlov in one of our earlier episodes with conditioning. He made the discovery around a learning process, and he had done it with dogs. And for dogs, salivation is something that is outside of their ordinary or conscious control, and using conditioning and pairing the bell with the food and salivation. In the end, just the bell would bring about salivation without the food. And that's exceptional, that at a level that's outside of conscious awareness, that learning can occur. And so we know now that our unconscious processes that are maintained in the body unconsciously are open to learning. And that's one part of the mind, But just practically, if you take a child who's got a test and there's some anxiety and develops a tummy ache, but each time they've got a test, they now have a tummy ache. Well, in hypnosis, we can help and correct some of that misunderstanding and misconception where a child would no longer be anxious about taking a test, no longer have to have the tummy ache. Because when you're working with hypnosis, you're in part working with the unconscious mind. So it's an incredible part of the mind to be able to access.
And that your unconscious mind can learn, but because it can learn, it can relearn things. That's more helpful at times.
Yes, sometimes we've had ideas, beliefs, even programming that wasn't helpful, that we weren't, that one's not even aware of. And we can access that.
Yeah, so that's the one part of the mind. So what's the other part of the mind?
The other part, the second part one can consider is what's often thought of as subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind really has to do with that part of the mind that relates to much of our memories, much of our learning, and some of our deeper beliefs, our experiences, our personality, our preferred styles of relating. And much of this is at a subconscious level. And it's really from birth. So if we go back to the computer analogy, that's much like your memory system, what's going into the memory. And well, when I say that, I'm actually going a little bit ahead because we're going to touch on that. What one can think of it is something of that hard drive for storage purposes. Okay. So when you have an experience, it's going to be stored in some way, and we can access these experiences remarkably with hypnosis.
Psychotherapy is not only a profession, it's a state of being. And for that, it requires continuous learning, training, and refining your skills. If you would like to become better in your role as a psychotherapist, come and join Dr. Warwick Phipps for in-person training at Treatment Work Center, where you will experience training like never before from a thought leader and expert in psychotherapy. If you would like some more information on our training or to book a training session, please visit the link in the description. And also, if you find these podcast episodes meaningful, please subscribe to the Art of Therapy.
And it is when we can access those experiences, we can actually work with them and work either through them or have a look at what to do that will be helpful for the client.
Yeah.
I mean, once you can access that.
Very much, yes. So the question is, if we're able to access that, how can we assist someone, and how does hypnosis work there? And what it relates to is the subconscious is something of a filter or a membrane, and in the early years up to 5, 6, 7, that filter is still sort of developing, and so much of the experience of taken on as fact, as strong belief, and at some point that filter sort of settles and becomes established. And from then on, when we receive input, it goes through to that filter in the subconscious. And if the new input or the new information is consistent with that subconscious belief, it's taken on and accepted. But if it's not, it gets ejected, as it were. So what's happening is there is a filter there. And that's really important. When I'll come back to that just now to look at how does hypnosis relate to that filter.
Okay.
But the key thing is we have the subconscious mind, and our experiences are then stored in that hard drive, as it were, and we can access them remarkably.
Okay. And then there's one more level to the mind.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, the third part is conscious mind. It's our point of focus. It's remarkable. It's our analytical thinking. But the main limitation is that very quickly it can only hold so much information. So quickly it becomes overloaded. Some people tend to think of it as as anywhere between 5 and 9. bits or chunks of information. And after that, it becomes overloaded if we try to remember a cell phone number and because it's got 10 digits, unless we chunk it in some way, it's going to be difficult. So conscious mind, while very, very important and point of focus, and does incredible reasoning, it quickly is overwhelmed with information, and so that needs to go through to the subconscious mind. Okay. So again, by analogy, I said earlier, the subconscious mind, something of that hard drive. Your conscious mind is the memory or the RAM that quickly becomes overloaded, and that information needs to be stored.
Okay. So with just understanding the 3 levels of the mind, the unconscious, the subconscious, and the conscious mind, how do one then utilize hypnosis then to access the subconscious mind?
Yeah, that's so important, because this is the key. What hypnosis is able to do, and we just said it's a state of mind in which the critical faculty faculty of the mind is bypassed. So the critical faculty is that filter.
Okay.
And so hypnosis in effect softens that filter, that membrane, and one is able to receive suggestions, inputs that are corrective, healing, and then change so those beliefs, ideas, thinking. And then after the hypnosis, it kind of settles and firms up again, but now it does so with the new beliefs, beliefs that are valid, and those that bring healing and help someone cope effectively. And that's where hypnosis is remarkable.
It makes me think of an example, and it takes me back to the time that I did that intensive training with you around hypnotherapy, where you just mentioned that it's an example of someone that somewhere they got a message in their life where that they don't work hard, or they just, whatever they do, they need to work harder and they need to do more. And that became part of their subconscious.
Yes.
And then they can get very accurate feedback from their manager when they're an adult, that they work so hard. And they know it on one level, but it just doesn't...
Very much.
It doesn't sit, it doesn't fit.
Yes.
And that's where the beauty and the power of hypnosis comes in, to be able to soften that filter, and that person can take in new information that they wholeheartedly believe and want.
Yes. You know, we spoke about it in an earlier episode when one looks at, CBT and schema therapy. But one of the deeper beliefs that someone may have is that they have the belief that I'm unlovable or I'm unworthy. And yes, if that is one of the deeper beliefs or schemas, then when they're at work, when you give this example, yes, they receive positive feedback. Someone says to them, I really value who you are and what you're doing. And if they have that schema and that belief, it will just it'll go through subconscious, hit the filter and just be ejected. And someone will go, well, I wonder why they said that. Maybe they want something from me, or they just don't know me well enough. But take that same person, and once they've experienced, if they've had the benefit of hypnosis or hypnotherapy and they've had some healing, they begin to realize, I am lovable, I am worthy. Now, when they receive that feedback at work, now they can receive it. Because it's now consistent with a new understanding, new belief about themselves. Where someone will go, thank you, I appreciate that, I really try, and I try to make a difference each day, so it means a lot for me to hear that from you. And one can just see how differently that feedback was received.
And how empowering that is for the client.
Yeah, deeply.
Yeah, there's so much value and power in hypnosis, and really profound work that can be done with it. But it also just makes me think, there's just with social media and media, there's so many things that's portrayed about hypnosis that's not always as accurate.
Indeed. There's so much misinformation and confusion about it. And one of those is that it takes time or needs time. No, it's just as Elman had clarified, it's state of mind. So you can have hypnosis instantly. You can also take it away. And the whole thing is we actually experience hypnosis all the time, or very often. someone who's driving may miss the turnoff. They're in deep thought. Or they get to their destination and they had changed lanes and changed gears, but it's just not strongly in their awareness. They were in hypnotic state. That's just a highway. It's often referred to as highway hypnosis.
And who hasn't experienced that?
Exactly, indeed. It's just part of life. Yeah. Or if you had a cocktail party and you're just about to engage, and that name is not there, just for the moment, not there. You turn around, you start walking away, and suddenly there it is. These are all aspects of, that's just everyday hypnosis.
It's actually such an organic process of human beings that we've all experienced it before.
Yes, very much. I think something that I've shared, because it still happens, because it's every day. In our house, the keys are up in a place, and I'll go to get the keys, but I anticipate that perhaps my wife has got the keys, or they're not back up. And I'll look, and they're not there. And I'll look through the house, and then I'll say to her, the keys are not hanging up. Do you know where the keys are? And she'll say to me, they are hanging up. And I'll say, I've checked. And then she'll walk with me, and as her finger points to the key rack, the key is there. So it was just there, but because I had the belief and didn't expect it to be there, it didn't seem there. It would be is just very common as a visual hallucination. So this is just a part of life. Hypnosis is something that's often occurring, but most of the time we don't register it as hypnosis.
It is there. We just, like you say, we don't notice it. We don't realize it's actually there.
Exactly. But it makes a difference that if we now utilize that in therapy, because it is this remarkable state that we're experiencing from time to time, but now utilizing that for therapeutic purposes, and that's really meaningful.
Yeah, it also just makes you think when just before my experience with hypnosis, one of the things that I thought is that you don't have any control when you're in hypnosis.
Yes.
And like I know now it's a misconception,
Yes.
but maybe we can explore that a bit.
Yeah, you've experienced hypnosis. You're very, you're both accomplished in facilitating it, and you've had meaningful experience of it.
Yes.
Yeah, so you know that so often one will think of it, and many think of it as loss of control. But in hypnosis, we have full control. If we experience or receive a suggestion that is uncomfortable, or that doesn't fit, we'll either just emerge from the hypnosis, or we just bypass it, because there's full control in hypnosis.
It's actually you're always in control of it. You, like you say, because it's a state of mind, you just bypass it, or you pop out of hypnosis.
Yes. If one was in hypnosis and whoever was facilitating then said, now go and do a cartwheel. If cartwheels wasn't your thing, you would just think that's not a really great idea.
Yes.
You just would ignore it. So the key thing in hypnosis is full control.
Okay. Is there other misconceptions that people sit with hypnosis?
There are. I think, there's several. Another misconception is kind of we give away secrets in hypnosis. No. Again, we're full awareness, so there's no giving away of secrets. I don't think anyone's ever given away their ATM or PIN number in hypnosis. It doesn't work like that, because it is a very natural state, and there's choice throughout. So no, there's no giving away of secrets. Whatever's private to you out of hypnosis remains private to you in hypnosis. Of course, if there's something, if it feels safe and you want to work with something, well, that's the ideal state to work with it in. And of course, then you can work through that meaningfully. But there's no secrets given away or anything like that. I would say another one is this idea that you kind of knocked out in hypnosis. And, You're not knocked out. Although someone looks like they're asleep, they're not asleep. They have full awareness. They're just so deeply relaxed. They look like they're sleeping. But interestingly, they'll never fall off their chair or anything like that because they have full awareness. It's just, there's no need to move in the usual ways. There's just such comfort, such deep relaxation. And so, yeah, one is knocked out or anything like that. That's why there is no such thing as sleep in hypno. It's not. It's actually a heightened awareness, heightened receptivity, and that's why it's an incredible learning state and a state to get in touch with oneself. So it's anything but sleep. But if someone observes it, they would think, I'm sure that's sleep, but it isn't.
It's not.
Yes.
And it is. It's when you're in a hypnotic state, you're fully aware of everything that's going on around you.
Yes, fully aware. Yeah. I would say just, I mean, there's so many, because as you said, there's the media and films and, social media and all sorts of things that go on. But another one that comes up is that, that you can get stuck in hypnosis. You can't get stuck in hypnosis. There's stories of people at school who someone is hypnotized and they can't come out and they're stuck in hypnosis. No, none of that. None of that happens. It can't. What can happen is someone, especially as we know, people who've been very anxious, they experience such relief when they're in this state. They want to stay there a little longer, but that's just by choice. And any hypnotherapist and therapist just recognizes that and gives them a little, minute or more, a little longer time, and then just helps him to emerge. But you can't get stuck. No.
It's a state of mind.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
It sounds so exciting, and just being able to go through a lot of the misconceptions, which makes for good TV, but it's not in real life.
Yes.
But I think it just helps to frame it, is that it's such an organic, everyday thing that we experience, and we're in full control, we're always aware, we can't get stuck there.
Yes.
Once we can recognize this, there's profound work that can be done in that state.
Yes, very much. It is a profound state, and in many ways, whatever therapeutic approach you've developed, anything that you utilize in hypnosis is very often going to be even more effective, more helpful, bring about more healing, because hypnosis is a remarkable state. So it's an adjunct to anything the practitioner has learned in their treatment approach. And for anyone who wishes to experience in the client, it is a remarkable state. In many ways, just going into hypnosis is therapeutic. That's even before doing any particular or working on anything or looking to address anything. Just being in that state.
It's already remarkable.
Yes.
And very healing, actually.
Indeed, yeah. And that's why if we touched on some of the earlier developments, it was originally at one time called suggestive therapeutics, where really the thinking is that utilizing hypnosis as an adjunct or hypnotherapy, we have therapeutic effects through the utilization of hypnosis, of suggestive therapeutics, which is just incredible.
It really is, and it's so well placed in the field of psychotherapy then.
Indeed.
Yes. Yeah, I think then the other part is just what really brought it to life for me is actually being able to see it and to see a facilitation. So but maybe we can pause here for now, but then in the next episode that we really look at a live demonstration of hypnosis.
Yeah, we can certainly do that, because as you note, that's the way you really understand hypnosis. It's one thing to talk about it, and as we've been exploring some of the misconceptions, but it's another thing to see it. So yes, we can look at a live demo, a demonstration of it, and I think that could be meaningful.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, I am too.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us on the Art of Therapy. If you found this episode meaningful, or if it expanded your knowledge, we would love to hear from you in the comments section. We are looking forward to continuing this journey with you. Until our next episode.